Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining me here on New Jersey Revolution Radio. This is Brian coming at you for our weekly Facebook live stream. Every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, we pop onto Facebook Live and we give you an interview, sometimes a panel show, sometimes it's me cursing with other socialists. But tonight we have something very special. I'm really excited to have a new guest in the studio. We just kind of met a little bit, very briefly, a couple times. But we're having an in-studio interview tonight. And if you guys think I thought my microphone was a big deal, having somebody actually here with me, talking to me live is exciting. Thanks for joining me tonight. Charlie Kratovil is running for mayor of New Brunswick, right?
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. It's
Cool,
a real pleasure
man.
and honor to be here.
So if you like what we're doing here on NJR, of course, I've got to ask you to go to the website and make a contribution. We're doing okay, but we were talking before this. I mean, it'd be nice to have like a little nice background here, make these broadcasts look professional, and hopefully attract better and better guests. But we can already tell by having you tonight, we're moving up in the world, definitely, man.
It's a thrill to be here. Thanks again.
All right. So please make a donation. Charlie, not everybody in our audience may know where New Brunswick is, so can you just tell us about the town of New Brunswick, New Jersey?
New Brunswick is a beautiful city. We are basically dead in the center of New Jersey, right in the heart of Middlesex County. It's the county seat. We've got a population of about 60,000 residents, and a lot of unique and special things have gone on there. It's older than our country. We're home to the State University of New Jersey, Rutgers, of course. That's
yeah.
The reason I went to New Brunswick was to go to Rutgers, and I fell in love with the city there. Rutgers actually been around 10 years longer than the country.
Wow, I knew it was old.
1766.
The buildings there are beautiful, man. You go over Route 18 there, and you see the I don't know what that building is, but it's across from the park as you go over the bridge coming from 1 and 9, and it's huge.
Yeah, no,
Do you know what building I'm talking about?
There's so many of
All
them.
right.
But you know, we've got a really amazing city going on there. But we also have a lot of problems. You know, as a matter of fact, the people in power get away with some of the things they get away with because we've got so many people who are there for a short period of time.
Right.
College students, other people who are renting. So we actually 3/4 of the residents of New Brunswick are renters.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm running a campaign to try to lift up the people who have gotten the short end of the stick for way too long in my city, and hoping to make that 5.5 square miles of beautiful city even more beautiful.
I think of it as bigger. Because it's a politically powerful city. Because Rutgers is there, because Robert Wood Johnson is there. What's the name of it now?
We've got not one but two major hospitals. So
Yes.
Robert Wood Johnson and of course St. Peter's University Hospital. But we've also got the worldwide headquarters of Johnson & Johnson, one of the biggest corporations in the country.
Yes,
and we've also got some great theaters and arts community spaces and everything that Rutgers brings as well. So it's really a happening place, and that's why I ended up starting a newspaper there.
Yeah, it definitely is. I've hung out in New Brunswick and done a lot of activist work down there. As a matter of fact. Plenty of
a rich history of activism.
Yeah, absolutely. There's plenty of coffee shop revolution going on there. Bar revolution too, probably a little bit of that.
Since even before our country existed.
That's true. So the recent history of New Brunswick has been commanded by seeming like very few people. In some of my research, I saw that your mayor is now running for his 8th consecutive re-election. Most of these, he doesn't even get an opponent.
So yeah, recently
that's like Kim Jong-un stuff right there, man. It's pretty impressive.
It is like, in my view, a threat to democracy when voters only have one choice. That to me is not democracy. Right. So that's one of the reasons I'm running. You know, we've had the same mayor since 1991. So I was in kindergarten in 1991, and
wow.
You know, before that it was his cousin, who was the mayor since 1979, Johnny Lynch, who was, you know, famously convicted of felony corruption charges and did some time in prison. So, you know, I'm working to make history in New Brunswick by liberating the city from this, you know, power structure that's basically the same tiny faction of the same political party that's controlled the city for going on 40 years now.
That results generally in, I mean, it can't just be about who's in power, but in bad policy, right? And I know there's a few examples of bad policy that I've heard about, but I don't know all the details about, and I'm sure many listening don't know the intricate details. But a national issue is water. We talk a lot about Flint. We have some cities on the map here in New Jersey. This city, my city, Woodbridge being one of them. But in New Brunswick, they've had issues with water too. But I'm not keen on all the details about it.
Yeah, so this is actually something our newspaper helped to expose and educate the public about some of these schemes that were going on. The first of which was, the worst kind of scheme. There were problems with the drinking water. They should have been telling people on certain dates and times that they should boil the water before consuming it. And instead of doing the right thing and being upfront about the problem, they covered it up and falsified documents and lied to the public and the state government. And ultimately, a man was imprisoned because of that corruption. The charge he pled guilty to was public corruption, and we covered that case aggressively for years to ensure that there was some semblance of justice for New Brunswick. But just when we thought it was all over, we uncovered another scheme. Basically, a couple of guys that were on the billing side of things at the water utility were doing favors in exchange for bribes. They were giving folks discounts on their water bills, or in some cases even phony water meters that wouldn't ring up the water.
Wow.
And a source actually gave me one of the water meters, and we did a broadcast, not unlike this broadcast you're doing right now. And I brought the water meter on as my special guest, and we educated the public about this scam. And then the police came to my office and with a search warrant signed by a Superior Court judge, and took the evidence, that water meter. And eventually now 2 people have pled guilty to that scheme as well. So we've had and that's just the water utility stuff, but we've had a sad and sorry history of corruption in New Brunswick, and ultimately the public has been not getting what they deserve, which is clean drinking water. And that's another reason I'm running.
Right. And so how do you get us there? I mean, it's good to know the problem, but how do we get to a situation? Because honestly, what's happening in New Brunswick is happening all over the country, and we have not come up with solutions yet. We are hearing the same towns for 4, 5 years talk about lead in drinking water, contaminated drinking water, boiling water, as you mentioned. How do we get a city like New Brunswick clean drinking water?
Yeah, so big problem is the infrastructure, right? So for many years, the administration was complacent and did not spend the money and do the upgrades that were needed at the water treatment plant and in the pipes that are part of the distribution system. So thankfully, because there's been a lot of attention on the issue,
right,
they've been stepping up. Mm-hmm. And if I get in there, I'm going to step it up to an even higher level and make sure that whenever there is a problem, people are notified immediately. We still have issues where, iron contamination, right? They're flushing the hydrants, and or some other issue comes up, and people are getting brown water out of their faucet unexpectedly. And I've been the number one proponent of saying, at least tell people if you've got a problem, tell them, so that they're not, unexpectedly getting brown water out of their faucet, or while they're doing laundry, ruining their clothes. So, I think, bare minimum promise is, if there's a problem, you can count on my administration to tell you right away, immediately, public, everybody. But we also need to make investments in the system to improve it, because it's really, a lot of cities like New Brunswick have old infrastructure that's been neglected, and we need to step it up and make an investment in that.
Is it a private water company running the system, or is it a public water company?
Well, funny you should mention that. We've been a public water utility for a long time, and then in the wake of that first scandal, one of the water directors quit, and the mayor made himself the water director and brought in New Jersey American Water, private company.
And I've heard of them. Now they're opening in several towns around the state.
Yeah, no, and I actually fought against the privatization of the Trenton water system, successfully stopped that from happening back in 2010. And so you could imagine my reaction when I get the tip. And this was the thing. They weren't even upfront about it. Somebody tipped me off. Hey, the mayor made himself the water director and signed a deal with New Jersey American Water. I get this on my cell phone 10 minutes before the council meeting. And so I bring it up at the council meeting. And this was gonna go past without anybody even saying a word about it. And I brought it up and then wrote an article that night, and the rest is history. And that after 15 months of hard pressure on the administration, we finally got American Water out.
Good.
And it's back to being 100% public utility.
But there's still work to be done on cleaning it up.
Absolutely. We can do better. People deserve it.
You also discussed, as far as your campaign topics, transportation, which I see mostly on a statewide level. I think our mass transit system is horrible. But you're looking at it at a community level, especially with the influx of students every year into your area. Rutgers runs its own bus program for its students. But there's still overflow into your community that you have to account for?
Yeah,
what needs to be done transportation?
It's amazing. We have one of the greatest assets when it comes to transportation. The Rutgers University bus system is the largest university bus system in the United States of America, and it's free for anybody. You don't have to be a student or a faculty or a staff member. And so I want to work together with Rutgers to take advantage of that asset and help share that asset with the rest of New Brunswick, because with just a little bit of coordination, getting the right partners on board, having the city step up during the times of year that Rutgers is not in session and they really drastically cut the service, and having the county step up and simplify some of their routes that they have going for a very modest cost, we could actually have one of the only city bus systems in the state. And I think that New Brunswick is the right place to do it, because we have so many people that need that type of service. We have senior citizens, we have college students who don't have a car and choose not to bring a car because parking is such a mess.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And we also have a lot of undocumented immigrants who cannot presently get a driver's license or participate in that system legally. So we want to make ways for people to get to their jobs, people to get to their medical appointments, people to get to the grocery store without having to spend the money and go through the inconvenience of using a private car service. We want systems that are going to connect our neighborhoods to these key places and ultimately be good for business, be good for the city, so that when people come to New Brunswick, instead of having bad experiences with the parking authority or the transportation system, we can actually give them a good New Brunswick experience and be able to connect people with a simple system. The problem with the systems today is that all the bus routes have wacky names that are hard to understand where they're going. Yeah, you got the New Brunswick shuttle, you've got the M5, you've got the double E, and it doesn't.
Well, that's a system, all right. That's some system.
And there are multiple systems that aren't at all coordinated. They got different hours of operation, different rules, different. Some of them have a suggested donation, some of them are free.
Right.
And I just want to centralize this and make a Brunswick bus system that's going to have all the information in English and Spanish in one place for people to know what services are available, when they're available, and get more bus shelters. That's something I've actually already had some success in, is getting the powers that be to put up some more bus shelters at locations, because that improves ridership. That makes it known that, oh, there's a bus that stops here and I got a place to wait, and you can put the schedule on the shelter and actually improve people's access to that information. So I'm working hard to do that, and I have a good plan to actually get those partners together and put together a system that's going to be cohesive and comprehensive.
Cool. Is that something that will create jobs as well?
Absolutely. I'm proud to say the Rutgers system, which is one of the biggest, they are now union jobs. When they first brought in the contractor, they were not unionized, but a good union got together, and those drivers are all unionized. And so I would like to see more good jobs for bus drivers, but also, and this is really where I think we have a chance to move the city forward in a way to kind of catch up for what we've lost and then some, is get these buses to be electric buses, so that we're not polluting, so that we're giving people another incentive to leave their car at home and not clog up our streets and add to the traffic and parking problem, but actually have clean transportation. It's a real win for the people.
Yes, transportation again is another statewide issue, but I've only thought of it personally from a statewide perspective. I think mass transit, I think trains, and how horrible New Jersey transit is, that I can't get a train from here to Atlantic City. We talk about
Yes.
Economic development. If I want to go to Atlantic City from here in Woodbridge or from New Brunswick,
Yeah.
it's like 4 hours. You got to go to Utah somewhere and come back in. And I'm 41 years old, and I grew up watching the Jetsons, and
Yeah.
I was thinking I would have a flying car that would fit in my briefcase by now. And I mean, we still can't even connect me to Atlantic City via train in this state. So.
Yeah, and it's not unlike the problems with the waters. We have this infrastructure.
Right.
We got lazy. We took it for granted, and we didn't make the investments to maintain
True.
and improve the system. And so we're actually looking at lower levels of service than what we had, 10 or 20 years ago when. Or 28 years ago when my opponent took office.
Yeah, that it kind of makes me want to ask the question of, where is your larger economic view? So do you consider yourself having a philosophy? If you've heard, my broadcast, we're strictly anti-capitalist here, but I don't ask that everybody subscribe to my personal dogmas. But do you see these issues like transportation in your town, like the large immigrant population? Do you see those as larger systemic problems that you can fight at a local level?
Yeah, I've just always, seen myself as, being extraordinarily lucky to be able to get a college education, be able to, survive in a city that's not everybody makes it. And, so I want to use my success, my ability, my privilege to be able to help the people that are struggling the most. And so, part of that is helping folks who are renting, helping folks who are, students, helping folks who are immigrants, helping the homeless population. I think that, New Brunswick has some people call it a homeless problem. Mm-hmm. But, these folks are people, and they deserve to have leaders look out for them instead of try to just find ways to get rid of them. So I want to, help the people who need the help the most. And I guess you could call that an economic philosophy. Okay. But at the end of the day, I think it's good for everybody, because when you help those folks, those people pay it forward, and the economic success that they have pours right back into the city that they're from. Yeah. So, if we can take folks who are making minimum wage and get them to be making higher wages, like I want to do with some of the people that are on the city payroll making very low wages, most of those folks live in New Brunswick and would be spending that money to better their families on local businesses. So I think it's a win-win for everybody.
What now is the minimum wage for a city employee? Are you aware of that?
So, matter of fact, I filed an Oprah request, just got the response a few days ago, and so the state minimum wage, I believe, is $8.60 an hour right now.
Yeah, wow.
And so I got the documents, and I saw that there's 30 people that are making that much or lower. There's actually 3 people that are according to the city's documents, their salary, their wage is lower than $8.60. So that's something I'm going to follow up on and make sure that
believe it or not, there are exceptions to our state wage and hour laws if you're disabled. And it's something that, it doesn't get a lot of,
I do know about that, and I don't want to pretend like I know the situation for these 3 employees, but I do.
So it may be legal, is all I'm pointing out.
It may be, but
not right.
I agree, and I want to make sure that the city's not violating the law. But even still, $8.60 to get by in a city where the rents are so high and where the cost of transportation and food are so high, $8.60 doesn't cut it. And I think that the city, a lot of Democratic Party politicians, like to talk about, having a higher minimum wage, but the Democratic Party officials that have been running New Brunswick have not decided to pay these folks any more than the bare minimum. Yes. And there's also, so I think that, where I'm going to start with this, and I encourage people to join me in this fight, is we have a need for crossing guards in New Brunswick. And a couple years ago, they did raise the wages for them and stepped it up because they were really having trouble recruiting those folks. And so now they make starting at $12.50 an hour. And there's a community leader in New Brunswick, Ms. Danielle Moore, who's always looking out for traffic safety issues, looking out for the kids being able to get to school and cross the street safely.
Right.
And former crossing guard herself, and she knows all the crossing guards, and she is pushing to increase that to $15 an hour. And so I think that makes common sense. Most of these folks are only working a few hours a day, so it's not a tremendous cost to the taxpayer.
Right.
And it would make it so you can recruit and retain more crossing guards for that important job. So I want to see them raise that, and if we can have some success with that, I want to push to get other folks to have higher wages.
Do you see racism involved in people being paid in your town lower wages? I know there's a lot of immigrant labor that works there. I know there's some great organizations working with them on wage theft.
Yes.
New Labor is just a group of people I've always admired. They've gotten some real tangible things done. They've gotten people money back that was stolen from them.
Yeah, and
you see that a lot.
And they pressured the city to pass the first anti-wage theft ordinance in New Jersey.
So. Yeah, I was at that city council meeting.
Oh, okay. Well, then we were probably there together. Yeah. New Labor does great work, and there's a lot of organizations that support workers' rights, and that's what I'm all about. I think that there is systemic racism in almost every component of the city, but certainly economically, it's apparent that there are folks who unfortunately exploit people who, for whatever reason, they feel like they're better than them.
Right.
But I'm not that kind of person. I think everybody deserves a living wage, and I certainly think if you do the work, you deserve to be paid.
Hard work.
There's a lot of people that get ripped off, and sometimes people don't exercise their rights. But New Labor is doing great work to make sure people know their rights and use them. And that's the type of thing. If I'm the mayor, I would organize events to educate people about their rights. The rights and responsibilities of renters versus landlords. I think that's something that the city could do more to educate about, but also workers' rights, your right to be paid minimum wage, your right to file complaints with the Department of Labor and to pursue complaints, if you feel you've been mistreated on the job or harassed by your boss. I think those are things that, a lot of people know that they have some routes, but they don't know the details, and I think the city government should step up and educate.
Well, I'm glad you're encouraging unions, because I've always felt that unions are a great educational force, and while they're not perfect, they have that component of them. If you're in a union, that comes with the territory, so it's good that you're reaching out to other communities that are not yet in organized labor, but if you're listening to this, you can form a union in your workplace already.
Right on.
I've got to be a good journalist here and try to pin you down a little bit. So we talked about racism, systemic racism, the effects of these low wages on people. So do you consider yourself either anti-capitalist or socialist or any type of do you believe in capitalism?
I am not a fan of the current system in New Jersey or the United States of America. I think it's a very exploitative system, and I think we deserve better. I think there's a lot of folks that are talking about Medicare for all.
Yes.
It's some of the things about this country. It's crazy. We're the only country that doesn't look out for our own in certain ways, and so I think that. If people think it's socialist to support everybody having health care, then call me a socialist, because I think that, people deserve that. And I think, what makes, New Brunswick great is the people there. It's not the corporations or the major, people making six-figure salaries, that some of which don't even live in New Brunswick, and they fly in helicopters to do their job. It's the people who live there, and they're the nurses in the hospital, the drivers who drive your bus. We had the 911 dispatchers, the people who pick up the phone when you call 911 when you need help. The city was about to lay off those folks and bring in a private company to take over the 911 system. Wow. It was going to potentially be a company that's not in New Brunswick.
I think actually my union has fought some of those battles, and
I presented a very constructive proposal that was successful. We got Rutgers to hire some of those folks that were about to be laid off, and the administration, credit where credit is due, they took my advice and they brought Rutgers in to take over the 911 dispatch service instead of a private company where the city would have no control, and they would be potentially those jobs would be not local people. And I don't know, when I call 911, I want somebody who knows the streets and knows the neighborhoods, not somebody who's in some call center somewhere else.
I don't think of socialism as healthcare or that. What I think it's really ownership over the means of production. I want to give a practical example of that,
Sure.
because I think too many people, when I talk about socialism or communism, it's from a utopian standpoint. But we have all these public works projects, and I am sure that Rutgers and these large corporations get tax abatements for them, right? I see it all the time. They give a tax abatement to build a Lowe's. They give a tax abatement, $6 million to build a road for a stadium, and the public gets nothing in return. Nothing. We get a stadium that not everybody likes football anymore. We get these things that generate income for private capital, but it's just coming out of our pockets because now you.
Well, and then somebody has to pay the taxes.
So shouldn't I own that fucking stadium? And I think that's what it boils. That's a practical example. But when I think of capitalism versus socialism, that's the dividing mark: is who owns those means of production, and how can you create socialism in New Brunswick?
Well,
I wouldn't want to turn New Brunswick into a little Cuba if I was running for mayor. Maybe your platform's not as far as mine.
Well, you can certainly say that I am running against the capitalist candidate in this election. The 7-term part-time mayor who works as a lawyer on the side at another government agency where he's paid. So far he's earned $216,000, all of it from a big developer who he's, in his capacity as mayor of New Brunswick, given a huge tax exemption to. I agree with you 100%. Developers need to pay their fair share of taxes. And the way our law in New Jersey works, it's really terrible, because what they do is they cut the school system out of the picture. So when they approve these tax exemptions, the city ends up coming out, more or less in the same place, but the school system gets no money for 30 years.
That's crazy.
And so the mayor in New Brunswick has pursued exactly. The kids are the future, and some of these buildings are inevitably going to have children in them, and the school's going to need to educate them. Yeah, and so we have literally dozens of currently in effect 30-year tax exemptions. Pretty much all of them are going to folks who are millionaires or huge companies that are doing massive developments that aren't serving the people, right? So occasionally there's one or two projects that might have a public component to it, but for the most part they're private rental housing that's not rent controlled, and often an out-of-state company that's going to be able to set the rent, pick who they want to live there, and charge as much as they want. And it's just crazy to bend over backwards for those folks when you've got people in New Brunswick who really need a leg up, and the senior citizen who's lived in New Brunswick for their whole life for 50 years, and they're second generation, third generation, and they're the ones who have to pick up the slack when those developers get the tax exemption. So I've already promised that I will not approve any long-term tax exemption that cuts the schools out of the picture, because they are really the I view it as theft. I think it's first degree robbery to take that money from the schools, because the Board of Education doesn't even get a vote on it. It's the city council and the mayor who get to approve it, and the Board of Ed just has to deal with it. And so I really think New Brunswick has gotten away with robbing those kids.
I wonder how many people even know that.
Most people don't. It took me years to figure out how this whole scheme works.
Yeah.
You hear tax abatements, you say, yeah, I'm against that. But then when you really look at the way the law works, it's a state law. And so it's happening all over the place. So, normally your taxes for property go, 40 or 50% of them, sometimes even more, go to the school system. But under a tax abatement, under the long-term tax exemption law, 95% of the payment goes to the city, 5% to the county, 0 to the schools, unless the city feels generous and wants to, chip into the schools. So, and in New Brunswick, they have not done that, despite people repeatedly coming and complaining that this was a scheme. This was inappropriate, and they continue to do it, and they do it in cases where the developments sometimes have no affordable housing. Sometimes they're out-of-state developers who have millions of dollars and don't need the exemption. Under the law, they're supposed to say that we're not going to build the project unless we get the exemption.
Right.
But that's usually a fraud. A lot of these companies can certainly afford to build the project. And, maybe 30 years ago, New Brunswick might not have been as desirable a place to build a luxury high-rise. But these days, downtown New Brunswick, developers are clamoring to get their hands on those properties and build. They don't need the exemption. That's not good public policy, and it ends up being, really kind of cronyism and capitalism at its worst, when they're just giving away the farm to these developers and not even negotiating, just giving them everything they want.
You referred to the part-time mayor, which I've heard in your campaign before. Does he literally work part-time? Do we know his hours, or are you just poking at him because it's politics and it's fun to poke at your boss?
Well, it is a part-time job, but I will work full-time. I promise that I will hold no other job, no side jobs, no other public position. I won't be double dipping. The current mayor, he used to work for the county government, and so inevitably had to split his time between those two interests, which sometimes are aligned, but sometimes might not be.
Yeah.
And he retired. He's retired, and he's collecting his pension already. So he's got a $99,000 pension that he collects while he's still in office. He gets the salary to be the mayor. And like I said, he's also working this side job in Milltown, a neighboring community, where he is the lawyer for the Ford Avenue Redevelopment Agency, this tiny government agency that nobody really pays much attention to. And their entire budget is funded by Borai Development, one of these big developers. So he's made a lot of money from the developer. Plus, he's got a law firm on the side where who knows who he's representing and what his interests are and how much he's bringing in. So, he doesn't necessarily punch a time clock, and it's hard to say how many hours he's working, but he's conflicted. He's got conflicts of interest that are preventing him from full-time representing the people. If you elect me, I will represent the people full-time. I won't have any side businesses. I won't have any side jobs. I'll be 100% for the people all the time.
You are running as an independent.
Yes, sir.
Right. You're not aligned. You're not affiliated with any party. Are you registered independent? Is that how you vote?
I'm a registered Democrat.
You're a registered Democrat, but you're running as an independent against this machine Democratic Party. What I've found, because I don't work within the Democratic Party very much, very, very little as possible. Let's put it that way. But what I find is working that way as an independent or as a socialist or as a Green Party candidate, people pay less attention to you. The media is inclined to kind of either ignore you, or when they do pay attention to you, poke fun at you. I mean, I've seen some Green reports that just weren't accurate in NJ.com, which is a rag as far as I'm concerned. Now I'd probably just burn the bridge, but I won't ask you to do the same.
Well, I think a lot of media outlets could do a better job, but I certainly appreciate some of their work.
There you go. That's good enough. So now, but you came from media.
Yes.
And I'm trying to learn media here on this podcast and trying to give a voice to people, who are running free of the establishment a bit. Where was it when you started your newspaper, which is called
New Brunswick Today.
New Brunswick Today. What year did you start that?
That was late 2011.
Late 2011. So about 7 years in operation.
Yeah.
What did you see when you opened in 2011? What was the landscape like then? And what have you seen it evolve into as we sit here today? And where does it need to go?
Yeah, so it's been really interesting because I had the good fortune of starting an online newspaper in Paterson first. Mm-hmm. I worked with the Citizens Campaign. We started PatersonPress.com, and I learned from one of the best reporters in New Jersey, Joe Malanconico, who really, taught me how to be a good reporter, how to be fair, how to cover a big city, how to get people to return your phone calls and trust your work. And I really was super lucky to have him be my mentor. And I then got to start New Brunswick Today because I knew a lot about New Brunswick. I was going to the government meetings. I just kind of started writing about them. And to my surprise, it caught on. People were really into it. People were really, like I said, there's a lot of exciting things in New Brunswick between the theaters and Johnson & Johnson and Rutgers and the police and the local government and the county government and the courthouse. There's never a dull moment. So starting a newspaper really was a smart move. I just kind of, was lucky to kind of fall into it,
right.
But it ended up being a really well-received venture, and
cool.
People would come out of the woodwork and say, "Hey, can I write?" And we built a team, and we really started an amazing institution there that I'm proud to say is still going strong. We've got some great reporters that are local, and so we're some of these media outlets, they come visit New Brunswick when a big story happens, but then they head out. Especially like New York television stations, they're not there every day, but we are, and so we are truly hyper local, and we've done I think a lot of work exposing and educating people about some really important issues. So where does it need to go? We need more things like that, and thankfully, the digital age, what we're doing right now. When we started New Brunswick Today, live video broadcasting was not even really on the radar that much.
There wasn't even a lot of video on the internet.
Right. And so now we're able to do that. I can do it, from my phone, so I can, if I'm at the scene of a crime or a protest or, just some breaking news, or if I just feel like I found something out really important, I can, go live on this and share it with our 23,000 subscribers on Facebook. So, it's really amazing, and more people need to do this stuff. Hold your local officials accountable, cover the issues that you think matter, whether that's the quality of the drinking water or the criminal justice system or, workers' rights or renters' rights, cover those things. And it's amazing. You can, all you need is the internet these days, So we
you should have a cool microphone like mine.
I wish. Maybe one day.
Cool, man. Well, listen, before we go, I want to make sure people can further get in touch with you. So please let us know. Facebook pages, websites, emails, whatever you want to put out there. And of course, for those of you watching on Facebook and for those of you listening on the blog, check out our website, www.njrevolutionradio.com. We're going to have this podcast up there, and we'll also post whatever links you tell us to. So
cool.
How can people get in touch with you, man?
Well, first of all, thank you so much, and thank you for stepping up and starting your own media outlet. Like I said, we need more things like this that are going to, put the people first, so you're doing a good thing, and I'm proud to be here. If people want to learn more about the campaign, you can go to cleanupbrunswick.com. That's our website. You can also follow me on social media. I'm facebook.com/Charlie4Change, the number 4, and same on Twitter, same on Instagram. And of course, you can check out New Brunswick Today and all the great news stories and videos. We've got them there on the newbrunswicktoday.com website or facebook.com New Brunswick Today.
Thanks a lot, man. And for those of you listening at home again, the website is www.njrevolutionradio.com. We continue to follow the school board down in Ventnor, which we haven't heard much out of, but we're hearing some plans of organizing around that again. I haven't gotten any recent reports, so I'm assuming the school board down there has still not responded to the demands of our comrades. So check that out. Those podcasts are still up. We've got another What the Fuck is Going On in Trenton with Pat Noble pretty soon, so we're all looking forward to that. If you haven't heard the latest, please check us out. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great night.